CBC's Stephen D'Souza in Houston. We're also looking, as you can see, at these aerial images of the procession that is going to begin to the ceremony as people are leaving that church where the funeral service took place throughout the afternoon in Texas. For more on all of this now, I want to bring in journalist and commentator Renee Washington. She's the host of Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington on Fox Sports and has just launched a new show, Redefining Us. Renee is in New Jersey, and thank you, Renee, for being patient throughout the afternoon and doing this with us. So just to start off, can you share with us your thoughts and your feelings after watching the funeral of George Floyd?
Well, Andrew, thank you for welcoming me, and I will have to say that as a journalist, but more importantly as a Black woman, this is all painful for me, to see all of this unfolding, to see the way that a family is mourning the loss of a loved one, a daughter mourning the loss of her father, siblings mourning the loss of their brother. To me, that's what makes this all so painful. You know, beyond being a sports reporter and the work that we do to cover games and to cover the excitement around sports and news, as a person, as a Black woman in America, as a Black woman that is also so desperately wanting change, this is all very emotional. And as touched on, it's goodbye to George Floyd, and it's a moment to celebrate his life. But it's also a moment as we step further to continue the fight, as Reverend Al Sharpton touched on.
And so how important do you think ceremonies like this are for bringing the community together?
That's a great question. You know, we have seen a lot of rioting, looting, protesting. People are up in arms. Our country, our world seems divided in a sense, but actually it's just allowing us to, in this discomfort, in this moment where we're addressing the elephant in the room, it's forcing us to have to come together. And I truly, solely believe that things sometimes have to fall apart to come together. You know, in order for us to move forward as a society, to be a more equal, just, peaceful country and world, it's going to take us addressing these issues head on. You know, I've lived my entire life as a Black woman and knowing that and being reminded that in society. And it's time for the world to look at it differently. We're not just defined by our color, our gender, who we love. We're defined by who we are as people and our character. So I'm hoping this celebration and everything around George Floyd's life allows us to move forward to be a better world.
Are you hopeful that is what will come of this? That's what so many speakers this afternoon spoke about, that everybody in the world, imagine everybody in the world knows who George Floyd is right now, that out of his death will come some good.
You know what, Andrew, I will say I'm very optimistic. You know, I think that we have seen this cycle time and time again. My mother and father, their mother and father have fought the same fight. And I think now between the power of social media and digital platforms, and even us having this conversation from two different countries to be able to address these issues head on, this is the time. You know, I don't think that in this moment, people are complacent with all the protests and complacent with the movement we've seen so far. This is just the beginning. And I really do firmly believe in watching the way, you know, I've even had a lot of great interactions with people reaching out, asking, what can I do? How can I help make change? So it's great that people are having this conversation. It's very uncomfortable. But as we know, all growth happens in moments where we're most uncomfortable, right? So it's the time now to come together, learn from this, move forward, and be better so we do not have to continue to live this cycle. So my future children and the next generation does not have to deal with these types of murders, issues, race crimes, hate crimes like this. So I'm very optimistic.
It's interesting that you say that, because I was just thinking about his niece, Brooke Williams. When she spoke, she was emotional, she was passionate, she was angry, and she said, you know, obviously referencing a slogan from the last presidential campaign on Making America Great. She's saying, when was America ever great? Like this was not just a murder, it was a hate crime.
Yes, and I think that's something that unless you've lived in this world as a minority in some capacity, you don't really understand how exhausting it is. You know, it gets very exhausting being a Black woman in my case, or being a minority in this country where you don't always feel like you are seen equally. And so to the slogan, Make America Great Again, or even just when people talk about getting back to what the world used to be, it was never great for my ancestors, at least. My ancestors were not willingly brought into this country. My ancestors lived through slavery. My ancestors lived through segregation. And my parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles lived through that as well. So it's time for us to change the narrative. You know, it's no longer going back to what the world used to be. We don't want to go back. We want to move forward. We want to make sure that we're addressing this head on and finding ways to honestly work through and change everyone's perspective in terms of how we look at each other. Right now, we're talking about race, but it also translates across gender, sexual orientation, all aspects of discrimination that we need to be better at as a society. So yes, it's time to move forward. It's time to stop comparing what we are now to the past. We don't want to go there. We want to be better.
Renee, it was great talking to you. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me, Andrew.
Host and commentator.